Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with Fractional executive and business consultant Nick Gausling. He optimizes specialty B2C companies for greater bottom line impact. His practical approach emphasizes identifying realistic actions that business leaders will actually take. Nick is frequently quoted in the business press and previously held leadership positions in multiple B2C companies. He currently resides in Houston with his wife and dog. Enjoy this interview.
Well, hey, it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out today for the show. I appreciate it.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
You bet. Before we get into your life as an executive and consultant, I want to know, the last 3 years with COVID was quite a thing. How did you survive that time period, and how does it change you?
Yeah. I mean, obviously had a profound impact on pretty much everyone worldwide, right? I don't think any of us were unaffected or unchanged by it. You know, for me, at the time, I had been married just about 1 year when COVID started, so it was kind of fairly early in my marriage. And, you know, prior to that, I had traveled a lot for work. And so, you know, I was on the road 1, 2, sometimes 2.5, 3 weeks out of the month. And all of a sudden, you know, we were just kind of locked down and couldn't travel. And so I was working from home all the time. And so, you know, that posed some interesting dynamics, relationally. I think it was ultimately a positive thing for us. And since then, I haven't been traveling as much, so I think it was, you know, a good thing for my marriage in a way. But gosh, just being able to, or having to cope with all the changes, not only on a business side, but just the way it kind of impacts your life. Now, being in Texas, because we live in Houston, the Houston area, we weren't locked down as long as some people. So I guess in that respect, it wasn't necessarily as big of an impact, but it was still, you know, just it's kind of forced us all into a whole new way of looking at things and how to be productive and valuing social time, actual face-to-face interaction with another person that we really didn't get. And, you know, me even being an introvert, I mean, it was still an impact, you know, not being able to have some of that interaction. So, you know, I think in retrospect, we're 3.5 years on now. Things are mostly back to normal, but, you know, some of the changes that have happened, particularly in the workplace and what we're seeing now with the whole remote dynamic and how workers are kind of pushing back against return to office mandates. It's fundamentally changed the global economy in some really interesting ways.
So let's get to the essence of exactly what you do for a living. If I was to put you in front of a bunch of third graders and one of the kids looked up and said, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" how would you answer them?
Well, to that kind of an audience, I'd say I help make companies run better so that they can help more people. And so that would be my very simplified to a third grader answer. My professional answer is I optimize specialty business to consumer companies for greater profitability and bottom line impact. So the way I do that is through work that would essentially be considered kind of like a fractional COO, which, an interim or part-time chief operating officer. I improve processes, align departments, and help make sure that things are running efficiently and not falling through the cracks.
So when you were in the third grade, what was your dream? What did you want to be when you grew up?
Growing up, I had always planned on being an attorney. And there actually is video somewhere, maybe my mom has it, from like the early 90s, where they did this thing on the local news where they had some of the school kids kind of come on and say what their school was having for lunch that day and then what they wanted to be when they grew up. And so there's video of me on the news, saying what we had for lunch that day, and I want to be an attorney, and I was first or second grade or something like that at the time. And so that was always kind of the plan. And I even, all the way up through high school, I went to a magnet school, like more of an advanced high school that had a law program, and so I took pre-law classes for 3 years. And then by the time I got to college, I just kind of dropped interest in that and wound up going in another direction and ultimately wound up in business. But the interesting thing is that even in business, I've still done a lot of stuff that is very legal adjacent. So a lot of things in like compliance initiatives and commercial terms and contract negotiations. So I still do quite a bit of that for clients even today. So I guess I wound up sort of doing that work just in a different capacity other than being an attorney.
So let's go back to where you were born and raised. What were some of these seeds that were put into you to want to do this work and to be, just how did all this happen?
It really wasn't planned. It just kind of developed as these things sometimes do. I'm from Las Vegas, which was an interesting place to grow up. But it's actually, people have these weird perceptions of it. It's fairly normal to grow up there when you're off the strip. I mean, there's some things you get used to, like having 24-hour access to certain things, and certain quality of restaurants and all that. But really, it's a fairly normal city outside of where all the casinos are. So that's where I grew up and lived there for most of my life until I moved to Texas. And my mom was always pushing me to perform really well, so she was the one who was really into my schoolwork and staying on top of that and making sure I was a high performer. And, my dad was very well liked in his line of work. He was in the hospitality business in various leadership capacities over the years, and everybody loved him. And some of what I think I maybe observed from him, even though I didn't really understand it at the time, sort of instilled some of those business lessons in me, like about the value of people that I still carry to this day. And I'd say really probably the third major influence was an uncle of mine who, he's in his 80s now, but he was a really profound mentor to me in a lot of ways. We would have complex discussions for hours and hours on all types of topics, philosophy and economics and all sorts of things. But he had been a successful entrepreneur in the industrial space in Wyoming and Montana and that whole Mountain West region back like in the 60s and 70s. And so really just kind of learning some things from him also, I would say, put me on kind of a path towards a business career.
So who would you consider a hero for you? Who was really an ultimate inspiration to be who you are today?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of different, it's influenced by a lot of different people. And like my uncle there that I mentioned was certainly a major influence. Really one of the profound impacts on my life was when I was a senior in high school. I lost my best friend to a car accident. And so that was really one of the, pivotal moments of my life, because it's always kind of like, hey, you never think that's going to happen to you or somebody you know. And so it was like losing a brother. And, that really was just a profound moment for me to sort of consider what's really important in life. And I think it's really sort of shaped kind of how I approach business and my goals of helping people through business, which is really something I place a high premium on.
So if you could meet anybody alive on the planet right now and spend some time with them, who would it be? That's interesting, because there's a lot of people that I think I'd like to meet. And the funny thing is, like, there's some people I'd like to meet who I probably could if I put in the effort to do it, and just, because of other constraints of work and family obligations, I just haven't. So that's interesting. But I guess if I were just going to wave a magic wand, I'd probably pick someone like a Warren Buffett or a Marcus Lemonis, or somebody who's been like a profound mover and shaker in business, and just be able to kind of, I guess, learn from them a little bit beyond what they present in their public materials. And who knows, maybe there's some business opportunity there I can look at. So I guess if I'm being purely utilitarian about it, that would be my answer. So what has been one of your best client success stories you've been a part of? Yeah, so, I have had a pretty eclectic career. And as far as the consulting and fractional COO work, I'm really just about a year into that. Prior to that, I'd been an executive in a very large multi-billion-dollar specialty retailer. And prior to that, had been in venture capital as an entrepreneur. And before that was in the food and beverage space, particularly specialty beverage, as an executive there. So the consulting work, purely consulting work, I'm about a year in, and I'm doing some really interesting stuff in terms of commercial terms and contracts, streamlining commercial terms on behalf of a client that I think has been very, very fruitful, is making a lot of positive impact for that client. I have another one I'm working with that is in the publishing business and direct-to-consumer publishing. I'm serving as a fractional COO there, setting up logistics, setting up all the back-end operations. The client, great guy, very smart, very talented. He's the author of his own line of books, but he had really no sense for how to run the operations and the back end of the business. So I'm getting to build all that for him, and it's really, really cool and exciting to see that. And I know he values it highly, and it's going to be great for him to be able to get his message out through his books. So of all the things that you've done in your life up to this point, what are you the proudest of? It's an interesting question. Because I guess you could say on the one hand, it seems like I've done quite a bit of stuff, but I don't feel like any of it is something that I would say I'm like, maybe I just don't like using the word pride. I don't know. Maybe that's just a personal preference. But I guess I'm very grateful, for my family, for my wife, and sort of being able to just get to that point that that I've built out a family here, and that's probably the most significant thing to me on a personal level. So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into a much younger version of yourself, say in your 20s, and you could give that younger version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained up to this point in your life. What would you tell that young version of you? Yeah. I guess I would say something along the lines of, really try to see the best in people, and have an understanding that everybody has unique challenges and things that
that nobody else can necessarily understand. Like we all have, like, nobody knows us as well as ourselves, right? And so being able to just sort of recognize that and show empathy towards other people, even if they're, irritating you or even coming at you with something, being able to just sort of calm down and have some type of empathy, I think is really important and something that the world needs a lot more of. Even when we disagree, it's helpful to really try to humanize whoever's on the other side of the conversation and realize, hey, we're just all trying to do our best and hopefully make a positive impact in the world. And I think, that's an understanding that I've gained over the years that was probably lost on me when I was much younger.
So, Nick, everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
That's a good philosophical question, I think, because kind of as we go through life, we're discovering who we are, and who that is can maybe change with time. So looking at it today, who would I say that I am? I'd say I'm someone who is trying to put good into the world through my skills, through business, who ultimately just wants to have a loving impact towards other people. And I think that the market and good business and serving customers and employees through good business practices is really one of the most powerful tools we have to do that. It's one of the things that kind of inspires me in business, is that business has for some reason has a bad reputation in some circles, as if it's just all about, hey, how greedy can we be and exploitive, and that's not how I see it at all. I see it as a tool for serving other people and producing goods and services for other people that make their lives better. And so that's kind of, I think, a big part of my mission in life, as I would define it today.
If anyone out there wants to learn more about you, hire you, anything about your business and world, where can they go?
Yeah, so everything you need to connect with me is on nickgausling.com. It's Gausling. So on there, you can sign up for my free business newsletter. That's a great way to stay in contact. You can hit me up on LinkedIn. And, if you're in a specialty business-to-consumer company and, you're looking for help, you can also schedule a free meeting with me on there, and we can talk about your business and see if there's a way to work together. So everything everybody needs is on nickgausling.com.
Right on. This has been great, Nick. Thank you so much for being flexible. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. Our esteemed theme music was composed and produced by the great E.E. Pointer of Kansas City's River Cow Orchestra. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.